Hello student, today we are going to discuss the prototype model. This prototype model is the model that uh, has advantage over the waterfall model, that in the waterfall model we do not get a software to test until all the stages of the all the stages of the development phase are completed. Like in waterfall model, you will get a working software only after uh, requirement analysis, after the design, unit testing, implementation testing, and maintenance. So it means that you have to wait for the completion of all these 5 states to get a software after which on which you perform testing. So it takes a lot of time. Suppose you there was a requirement that you got later after starting the design process, then you do not get any chance to update that while because at that time you were busy in unit testing. This is the major drawback of the waterfall model. And that this delay in discover and in this model the discovery of error is done at the end of the stage, last stage, or fifth stage, that is testing phase. So it takes so much long time to discover that what are the actual error. And definitely we know that it would be better if we get error as soon as possible, because if we get an error early stage, we can change our design and modify it accordingly, and the lot of effort that were made without not considering that error in mind will not create any problem further, not create problem any further. So for the betterment of this model, a model came that's called the prototype model. Prototype model is the model is in which a prototype of the software is developed instead of developing the actual software. It means you do not develop the final product directly, but first you prepare a prototype of that software, and considering a subset of requirement of it, and when then you check, suppose there are hundreds of requirements of the user, then considering that what are the priority of these, we shall first find out the most prior high priorities requirement first, and we shall develop a prototype considering all these requirements. Here suppose there are 100 requirements, then we are taking only suppose 10 topmost uh, high priority requirement first, and we shall build a prototype considering only those requirements. Once a prototype with uh, which satisfies these 10 requirements build, we check out that whether it is satisfying all these 10 requirements or not. So uh, this in this way, once the process the prototypes is approved, we redesign or upgrade this software with another chunk of requirements, another chunk of uh, requirements which are of high priority. So, and in case the first prototype fail, then we revert back to our designing process. This can be shown in this diagram. Just take a look. Here we can see that there are stages: requirement and quick design. Not design, but quick design. Quick design can be developed because we are taking only a subset of requirement, and considering those requirement, we are building a software. So it will take less time in comparison to the full-fledged software. So it is called the quick designing. Okay. Then we shall perform the implementation of these soft module on basis of this requirement, this design, and after implementation, this will be verified by the customer. If the customer accepts the prototype, then we then we shall upgrade our design considering few more requirements, and if it is not accepted by the customer, then we send it back. We again perform the process of requirement quick design as per suggestion, and after this again we shall check out that what are the fault, and to remove this fault we shall repeat the process of designing, and for the redesigned module we shall again perform the previous steps. After that will be sent to the customer. Again the customer will verify that whether this prototype is working or it has some error. If it has some error, then this will be again this will not be accepted by the customer, and he will send this to for refinement. So this process of refinement for first subset of the requirements will keep on going until we do not satisfy our customer. Here we can see that here there is an advantage that the client can get a prototype in very short span of time. So if he has a problem with the prototype, he will inform you in early stage. And so you can rectify that problem easily, because all we know that at an initial stage, if you get an error, it is easier to modify in coding rather than writing down the hundreds of line and after that modifying at each place. Uh, so in this prototype model, there is an advantage that gets a prototype which he can validate in early stage, so the requirement can be understood early. So so we can say that this review gives the feedback to the developer that helps to remove the uncertainties in the requirements of the software, and starts an iteration of refinement in order to further clarify the requirement as shown in figure. The prototype may be a useful program, but it is not suitable as final software product. Why? Because the prototype was built just considering that considering the subset of the requirement. So this is just used for better understanding of the final project, but this cannot be used as a final software. So the reason may be the poor performance and maintainability or overall quality. Because if you are considering only a few of the requirement, then definitely you will not get the software that satisfies full out. Suppose you are just considering 10 requirement, the software built considering those requirement will be very different from the software that is built considering the hundreds of requirement. The quality of the software would be, and the performance also would be very much less efficient than less efficient than the in comparison to the final software. The coding of for the prototype is not useful because from our programming experience we know that if you designing considering only the 10 of the out of only 10 of requirement out of 100, then the coding style would be very much different if you consider all the 100 requirements. For example, for 10 requirement, it is sufficient to choose 5 variables, 6 variables, suppose. And for the 100 of requirement, you need 20 variables. For there would be major difference and issues through which the variables are related with each other and different logics, which will not be clear in the prototypes. So the coding that you have done during the prototype model will be of no use and it is thrown away. However, the experience gathered from developing the prototype help in developing the actual system. But the experience that you get or the logic and the final idea of the product that you get in your mind is very valuable for designing the large size of product. Therefore, the development of prototype might involve extra cost because first you code considering the 10 requirement, then you design code for 20, then for 30, then for 40, 50, and so on. So this iteration of designing every time, yeah, it is quick to design, but if we consider all these steps, it takes uh, extra time and similarly the extra human resource and so the extra cost. But overall cost might be turned to be lower than that of the equivalent system developed using the waterfall model. How? Because in waterfall model, if an error comes out, then it is very difficult to modify or there are some requirement modification. Then you again go back to the initial stage and you start doing the modification as a whole. But in this case, you suppose your second prototype, third prototypes is rejected by the customer, then he shall uh, get an idea how to deal with the first 20 requirements. He shall modify according to the new 10 and rest of the requirements. And in this way, the portion of modification or percent of modification would be less in comparison to completely redesigning. Okay. If you take a look, once the prototype accepted the lower portion, last 4 steps that are designed, unit testing, system testing, and maintenance are very much similar to the waterfall model. The developer should develop prototype as early as possible to speed up the software development process. After all, the sole use of this is to determine the customer real needs. As we know that all these exercise is being done just to understand the actual requirement of the software. This may sound that it's very irritating to design prototype and again validate, after validation redesign it. But you know that in the innovative field where the client is not also aware that what he will wants actually, and developer is not and cannot impose certain things to the client, there this model is better to understand the requirement, because the client will not approve your product until he gets satisfied. So instead of modifying or redesigning from stage one, you try to get this idea and detail better software by understanding the need of customer, and that can be understand only by the involvement of the customer. And the we customer can get an idea of the software only by visualizing it or using it. He cannot imagine the complicated feature just by explaining by explaining it with help of documents. So he will not understand that what the developer actually want to display or implement. So he would only understand if he get a prototype, and by working on the prototype, developer and client both understand the shortcoming and the requirements of the softwares. So in this way, rather it's take more time, it's more time and cost, but it is better to understand. And but overall cost of large size software development using the prototype model is less than the waterfall model, which is which is the one, least efficient in comparison to the prototype model. Once you finalize the software requirement and specification, the prototype is discarded and the actual system is then developed. Once you got approved prototype, then you better understand that product. Now you do not approve that product, but you finally start after requirement. You consider you that considering all those final requirement, you again start the designing process for the last time. Thus, it is used as an input to waterfall model and produce maintainable and good quality software. So by taking a look, you can see that last stage are like waterfall model. So you can say that this model, prototype model, is used as a input to the waterfall model. And this model require extensive participation and involvement of the customer, which is not always possible. So you can implement prototype model only if customer is fully involved with you and he is ready to give you time to and verify those software and to share his idea for the refinement of the prototypes. So I summarize it all one again. uh, that this prototype model is a model which is better than the waterfall model, because in waterfall model the client gets a final product only at the end of the all the 5 steps. So it take a lot of time to reach up to that stage. And when the customer rejects that product, you need to again repeat the all the five steps, and this will become very expensive. For betterment of this, new model called prototype model came, in which we first take a subset of the requirement and build a prototype of the software that is not of that quality of the software, but which is designed quickly, and in that time you show that prototype to the customer. And if customer rejects or find out some error in it, this design is refined. Until the prototype is refined and approved by the customer, this process goes on. After that, we follow the steps of waterfall model. So we can say that this prototype model is used as an input to the waterfall model. This prototype model can be used only when the client is ready to give you the time, and this is much better than the waterfall model waterfall model, and it's better for the large size product. Like our builders, once they start building you cannot design 50 40 50 story building just without making a model of it. You shall analyze it how miniature of smaller building of it. A builder cannot go directly to construct a 40 50 story building. First he should gain the experience of buildings was not a single story, double story, 5 story, 4 5 story building. By building these small size of building, he will get an idea what are the problem, what are the complications that arises. Only then this he can build a 50-story building. And the same concept that is used in constructing a single ground floor building cannot be implemented in the multi-storied building. So in the real life, we all can also see uh, that these prototypes of the multi-storied building are built by the builder to get the experience and knowledge. But you cannot use the same dimension of the beams or pillars that you use in the single storied or double storied building inside the multi-storied building. The dimension change, and you need to completely reconstruct or redesign your pillars and beams and structures according to the requirement of multi-storied building. So here we can say that we also follow a prototype models, but by this you go through these steps. So you can correlate with that. If a builder invests his time in building single story, double story, 3-story building, he get an experience. After getting an experience, he used this experience in constructing the multi-storied building. But he does not use exactly the dimensions or standard used for a standard construction concept for the double-storied building in the multi-storied building, and he redesigned. So you can understand that in similar way, in prototype model, it takes longer time. But if you find out one fault through the client or you by yourself, then you can rectify that problem in single storied building in less time in comparison to the multi-storied building. So this model is very much similar and re, uh, matches with your real world. So that's all about the prototype model. Thank you.